The millionaire's lawyer fled mid-trial, and the cleaning lady took his place. Before we start the story, tell us where you're watching this video from. Enjoy. The New York courthouse was packed from early morning with journalists crowding the hallways. Alexander Sterling sat before the judge, his expression grim, his hands cuffed on the table, his gaze fixed on a point that didn't exist. He knew his every move was being watched, recorded, and judged by hundreds of people who didn't know him, but were already convinced of his guilt. The murmuring stopped abruptly when Robert Vance, the defense attorney, stood up. His face showed a mix of nerves and annoyance, and without anyone expecting it, he closed his briefcase and spoke with a tone that landed like a sharp blow against the silence of the room. Your Honor, I am withdrawing my representation. I will no longer be defending Mr. Sterling. The attendees erupted in surprised whispers. Some journalists immediately raised their cameras. Alexander lifted his head in confusion. "Robert, what are you doing?" he asked in a desperate tone. "I'm sorry, Alexander," the lawyer replied, without looking at him. "I can't continue on a case where my client won't cooperate with me." The words echoed in the courtroom. Everyone knew that phrase in legal terms meant Robert was implying that Alexander was lying or hiding information. Judge Miller adjusted his glasses and looked at the lawyer with obvious annoyance. "Mr. Vance, this is highly irregular. Do you understand you are abandoning a case in the middle of a preliminary hearing?" "I understand completely, Your Honor," Robert said, picking up his briefcase. "And yet I must withdraw." Alexander felt the ground shift beneath him. His lawyer, the only one who was supposed to be on his side, was leaving him in front of an entire country that wanted to see him locked up. He tried to stand up to protest, but an officer at his side firmly touched his shoulder. In the audience, a woman took a deep breath. Her yellow uniform made her stand out among the formal suits. It was Laura Evans, the woman who had been cleaning Alexander's house for over a year. No one knew she was there. No one knew that she too had been sleepless for days, mentally reviewing every detail of the life of the unjustly accused man. Laura swallowed hard as she saw Alexander left alone before the judge, without a lawyer, without support, and without anyone to speak for him. She remembered the morning he had found her sick mother sitting in the kitchen and had without hesitation paid for the medicine they needed. She remembered the times he treated her with respect, never humiliating her like so many other employers, and she remembered the night of the supposed attack because she saw him. She heard him, and she knew exactly where he was at that moment, but no one else knew. The judge was about to suspend the hearing when Laura stood up without a second thought. She felt everyone turn towards her as if she had committed a forbidden act. "Your Honor," she said with a firm voice, though she was trembling inside. "I want to say something." The silence was immediate. No one understood what a cleaning lady was doing trying to speak in a high-profile trial. One of the officers gave her a warning look, as if waiting for the order to remove her. Judge Miller frowned. "Miss, who are you?" "My name is Laura Evans. I work at Mr. Sterling's house," she replied without looking down. "And I have important information." The murmurs returned with force. Several journalists aimed their cameras at her as if they had struck pure gold. Alexander recognized her as soon as he heard her voice, and his eyes widened in surprise. "Laura, what are you doing here?" he whispered in disbelief. She didn't answer. She knew if she replied, she would hesitate, and she couldn't hesitate. The judge took a deep breath, making it clear he had no patience for interruptions. "Miss Evans, this is a serious legal proceeding. No one from the public may speak without authorization." "I understand," Laura said, "but what I have to say could change everything. I was with him the night they say he attacked the businessman, Mr. Bauer. I know exactly where he was, and I know he couldn't have done it." An absolute silence fell over the room. Alexander closed his eyes, relieved but terrified at the same time. He didn't want her to get into trouble. He didn't want Laura, of all people, to bear the weight of defending him in front of an entire country. The judge exchanged a worried look with the court officials. This was no longer just an interruption. It was a spontaneous testimony that could completely alter the course of the case. "Miss Evans, if what you're saying is true, you will have to state it under oath," the judge indicated. "I will, Your Honor. I have nothing to hide," she said, taking a deep breath. A reporter muttered, "This is about to get out of control." And he was right. The judge called for a 20-minute recess. The officers took Alexander to a private room, while Laura was escorted to another room where her identity had to be registered. 2 reporters tried to follow her to get a statement, but the guards blocked their way. Still, the cameras kept rolling as if she were an unexpected celebrity. Laura sat on a metal chair, nervous, her hands clasped. Her heart was beating so loudly she could hear it. She didn't regret it, but she couldn't deny she was scared. This wasn't her world. She didn't belong in courtrooms or media scandals. Her life was simple, clean support her mom survive. But now, she was in deep. A guard suddenly opened the door. "They need to speak with you. Follow me." Laura stood up slowly. Before leaving, she took a deep breath and reminded herself she couldn't turn back. Not even if her voice trembled. Not even if the whole country judged her. Not after what she knew. Not after what she had seen that night. As she walked down the hall, she thought of Alexander again, of how he always treated her with respect, how he never made her feel inferior, how she saw with her own eyes him entering the mansion, exhausted, right at the time when, according to the police, he was beating Mr. Bauer in a warehouse on the other side of the city. There was no way it was true, and if no one else was going to say it, she would. Laura moved forward, feeling that with each step she was entering a story much bigger than she had imagined. And this was just the beginning. Laura walked behind the guard, unsure of where they were taking her. The hallway was filled with officials moving hurriedly, carrying folders, and talking among themselves as if the world depended on their every step. When they reached a small room with white walls, the guard invited her in. Inside, 2 people were sitting behind a desk, both with serious expressions. "Please have a seat," said a woman with glasses reviewing some documents. Laura obeyed, trying to hide the trembling in her hands. She didn't know if she was going to be scolded, interrogated, or thanked. Anything was possible at that moment. "Miss Evans," the woman began, "we need to confirm your identity and your employment relationship with Mr. Sterling. How long have you been working at his house?" "For a year and 2 months, Laura answered in a firm voice. "And were you with him on the night the incident with Mr. Bauer occurred?" asked the man sitting beside her. Laura hesitated for a moment. She knew she had to be careful, but also honest. "Not the whole night, but I saw him enter the mansion at the exact time they say he was beating Mr. Bauer in that warehouse. He couldn't have been in 2 places at once." The 2 officials exchanged glances. The woman took notes. "You understand that your testimony could change the direction of the case," she said. "And you also understand that you will face a lot of pressure, even threats. Are you prepared for that?" Laura took a deep breath. She wanted to say no, that she wasn't prepared for any of this, that she could barely sleep, and her life had never been this complicated until now. But she couldn't back down. "I'm ready," she replied. "I just want to tell the truth." The woman closed the folder. "Very well. In a few minutes, you will be called to testify." While they waited, Laura took out her phone to let her mother know she was okay. She had several missed calls and unread text messages. "Where are you?" "Laura, answer me. I just saw something on the news. Please tell me you didn't do something crazy." She sighed. Her mother had always been protective, but now it was going to be worse. She sent a short message. "I'm fine, I'll explain later." As soon as she hit send, the door opened and Judge Miller entered with a serious expression. The official stood up immediately. "Miss Evans," he said, "I need to speak with you privately before allowing you to testify." Laura stood up, not knowing if this was a good or bad thing. She followed the judge to his chambers. It was a sober place, with few decorations, just a bookshelf and a desk piled with papers. He closed the door and observed her carefully. "I will not allow this to turn into a circus," he warned. "If you lie, if you invent something, or if you have ulterior motives, know that you will face serious consequences." "I'm not lying," Laura replied. "I saw Alexander come into the house. I saw him with my own eyes." The judge narrowed his eyes. "It's not enough just to see him enter. The prosecutor will argue that he left afterwards, that he could have gone to the warehouse and come back. Can you assure us that didn't happen?" Laura swallowed. I think I can," she said, hesitating. "You think?" the judge asked harshly. "I need certainty, Miss Evans." She clenched her fists. "The house cameras were off, but I know who turned them off. It wasn't Alexander." The judge looked up, surprised. "Who then?" "I'm not 100% sure, but there were strange movements the week of the incident. Entries that didn't match staff hours, deleted files, a technician no one officially hired. I have proof." The judge observed her with renewed attention, as if starting to see her not just as an employee, but as a key piece of the puzzle. "If this is true, you will have to show it tomorrow with evidence. Do you have it?" Laura nodded. "Yes, or I can get it tonight." "Either way, you will have to present it," the judge said. "Now go. I need to reconvene the hearing." Laura left the chambers with her adrenaline pumping. Her chest rose and fell rapidly. She felt like the world was spinning too fast, as if she had started an avalanche without meaning to. As she returned to the waiting area, her phone vibrated again. She thought it was her mother, but it wasn't. It was an unknown number. She hesitated to answer, but finally swiped her finger. "Hello," she said. "Yes. Who is this?" The silence on the other end was unsettling. Laura was about to hang up when a distorted, almost whispering voice uttered words that sent a chill down her spine. "Stay away from the case, or you'll regret it." Laura felt the air leave her lungs. Her hand trembled. She turned to see if anyone was watching her from a distance, but no, there were only people walking back and forth. "Who are you?" she asked in a thin voice, but the call disconnected. A knot formed in her throat. She didn't know if she should report it or keep it to herself for later, but at that moment her heart was beating so fast it almost hurt. She forced herself to breathe deeply. She couldn't back down. Not now. A guard appeared to guide her back to the courtroom. Upon entering, the reporters attacked her again with flashes and questions. "What is your relationship with Alexander Sterling? Are you lying to protect him? Are you being paid? Is it true you were a key witness?" She looked down and kept walking. She felt the media pressure crashing down on her like a giant weight. She wasn't used to this. Her life had always been discreet, without complications, or cameras chasing her down a hallway. As she moved forward, a familiar voice stopped her. "You're here." "I can't believe it." Laura turned. It was one of the other housekeepers from the mansion, a woman named Sheila, who had eyed her with suspicion for months. "I didn't think you were capable of getting involved in something like this," she said. "If I were you, I wouldn't stand up for a man with so many enemies." "I only came to tell the truth," Laura replied. "The truth?" Sheila repeated mockingly. "Well, you better have proof, because we're all going to get dragged into this." Laura didn't answer. She didn't have the strength to fight with anyone. She continued walking until a guard led her to the main courtroom entrance. There, Alexander waited, hands cuffed, flanked by 2 officers. Their eyes met. He looked exhausted, worried, but upon seeing her, his expression changed slightly. "You shouldn't have done this," he said in a low voice. "I had to," she replied. "I don't want anything to happen to you because of me." "Nothing's going to happen to me," Laura said, though she didn't quite believe it herself. "You know you weren't guilty." "I know it too, and I'm going to prove it." Alexander tried to say more, but the officers hurried him along. The judge called for order as the room filled up again. Laura felt her heart pounding against her chest. It was her turn. When the judge called her to testify, she took a step forward. The public's murmur died down completely. Alexander looked at her nervously. Sebastian Croft, sitting at the back, watched her with an almost imperceptible smile, a smile that seemed to say, "You won't get far." Laura stood before the witness stand, raised her hand to swear to tell the truth, and in that instant she knew that this step would change her life forever. Laura felt as if the witness stand was much higher from where she was standing. Although she tried to stay calm, her fingers were clenched together. Judge Miller watched her intently, as if trying to decipher every thought she had before she even spoke it. "Miss Evans," the judge began, "state your full name and occupation." "Laura Evans. I work as a housekeeper in Mr. Alexander Sterling's home," she replied, trying to make her voice sound firm. A murmur went through the room. Some couldn't believe that a cleaning lady was the key to such a high-profile trial. Others looked at her with pity as if she were about to sink on her own. The prosecutor rose from his seat, adjusting his tie. "Miss Evans, can you explain why you are so sure that Mr. Sterling was not at the scene of the attack?" Laura took a deep breath. "Because I saw him enter his house right around the time the assault allegedly occurred, and he didn't leave again during that time." The prosecutor smiled smugly. "How can you be sure? Were you watching the door all night?" "No, but—" Laura clenched her fists. "I heard him go upstairs. I heard his steps in the hallway, and then the door to his office. I know that sound. I work there every day." "And after that?" he insisted. "After that I continued working on the ground floor, and I also heard when he came down to the kitchen for a bit. He was tired. He looked exhausted. He couldn't have been beating someone in a warehouse on the other side of New York." The prosecutor narrowed his eyes. "Do you have proof of what you're saying? Any video, any photo?" Laura took a deep breath. This was the complicated part. "The security cameras weren't working." The prosecutor raised an eyebrow. "How convenient." "It's not convenient, it's strange," she corrected. "The cameras were turned off days before the attack, and according to the record, someone reset them from the central unit. But it wasn't me or any other authorized employee." The prosecutor opened his mouth to reply, but the judge raised his hand. "Explain that in more detail, Miss Evans. How do you know they were tampered with?" "Because I'm the only one who cleans Mr. Sterling's office," she replied. "And 2 weeks ago I found marks on the system's fuse box, as if it had been forced. I also noticed that the technician who supposedly came to check them was never registered on the visitor list, and nobody hired him," I asked. An even louder murmur filled the room. People's expressions began to change, perhaps looking at Laura with a bit more respect. The prosecutor intervened again. "So you're implying that someone turned off the cameras on purpose?" "I'm not implying it," Laura said. "I'm sure of it." At the back of the room, Sebastian Croft watched her without blinking, with a gaze that sent shivers down her spine. Laura felt his presence like a cold shadow brushing against her back. She had heard rumors about him, things she never wanted to believe, but now they were making sense. The prosecutor, annoyed by how the situation was turning, decided to attack from another angle. "Miss Evans, did you ever have a more personal relationship with Mr. Sterling, something that might distort your objectivity?" The room erupted in comments and awkward laughter. Alexander lifted his head abruptly, indignant. Laura felt her face burn with rage. "Of course not," she replied. "He's just my boss, and if I'm here it's because I'm telling the truth, not because I want something from him." The judge slammed his gavel on the desk. "Order in the court." Laura used that second to look at Alexander. He returned her gaze with a mixture of gratitude and concern. He didn't want her to suffer for his sake, but it was too late to stop her. The prosecutor changed his strategy. "Miss Evans, you said you heard footsteps and sounds in the house, but you cannot be certain that Mr. Sterling didn't leave later." "That's not true." "No," she replied. "He didn't leave because—" Laura hesitated for a few seconds. This was the moment. If she said it, she would be exposed, but if she didn't, everything could fall apart. "Because that night I also checked the time clock at the back door," she confessed, "and it was turned off. Later I discovered it had been malfunctioning all week. The technician who checked it wasn't on the list either. Someone wanted there to be no record of entries or exits." The silence was profound. Even some journalists stopped writing. The judge watched her intently. "Do you have any physical proof of what you're mentioning?" "I have photos and reports," she replied. "I just need time to gather them." The prosecutor snorted. "Your Honor, this is absurd. We are letting a cleaning lady invent baseless theories to save a millionaire." Laura felt indignation rise in her throat. "I'm not making anything up. And if you want proof, I'll bring it tomorrow. But what I do know is that Mr. Sterling was in his house that night. I saw him. I heard him, and he wasn't in any warehouse beating anyone." The judge thought for a few long, heavy, uncomfortable seconds. "The hearing is suspended until tomorrow," he finally ruled. "Mr. Sterling will remain in custody. Miss Evans, you must deliver the alleged evidence first thing in the morning." Alexander looked at her with silent gratitude as the guards led him away. Laura felt a knot in her stomach. She didn't know if she had done the right thing or if she had made a huge mistake, but there was no turning back now. When she left the courthouse, the reporters practically cornered her. "Why are you defending Alexander Sterling? What do you gain from this? What proof do you claim to have? Do you fear for your safety?" Laura tried to walk without responding, but between the flashes and the pushing, she began to feel dizzy. It was then that she heard a familiar voice. "Laura, what have you done?" It was her mother, Martha, approaching with a face full of worry. Her eyes were moist, as if she had been crying. "Mom, I just told the truth," Laura murmured. "The truth can get you into huge trouble," Martha replied. "That man has very dangerous enemies. Do you think they're just going to stand by while you expose them?" Laura lowered her head. She knew Martha was right, but she couldn't ignore what she had seen. "I couldn't stay silent." "Well, you're in it now," Martha said, "and I don't know how you're going to get out." Just then, Laura's phone vibrated again. A message from an unknown number appeared on the screen. "We warned you." Her blood ran cold, and although she tried to hide it, her mother saw her expression. "What happened?" Martha asked. Laura shook her head. "Nothing. It's nothing." But it was something, and it was just beginning. Let's play a game for those who read the comments. Write the word salad in the comments section. Only those who made it this far will get it. Don't forget to check the video description where I've left some ideal products to improve your rest and well-being. Let's continue with the story. Laura barely slept that night. While her mother slept in the next room, she sat at the kitchen table staring at her phone, as if it might explode at any moment. Every time she thought about the message she received leaving the courthouse, a shiver ran down her spine. She could feel something larger moving behind everything, something she couldn't quite see, but she knew it was nothing good. She turned on her old computer, the one she used to watch videos or print things for her job, and opened the folder where she kept the photos she had taken at the mansion. There weren't many, but some were important. The image of the open fuse box, another with marks on the screws, one more with the time clock turned off. She had taken them because it seemed strange, not because she imagined they would one day serve as evidence in a trial. As she reviewed the files, she felt a knot tightening in her throat. There were things she wanted to forget, but now she needed to remember everything, especially what she saw that night. She thought of Alexander tired, walking to his office, never imagining that hours later he would be accused of a brutal crime. She remembered how he had greeted her with a tired gesture, never imagining it would be the last peaceful night he'd have in a long time. The sound of her phone vibrating snapped her out of her thoughts. She had a new message. This time it wasn't a threat. It was from her mother. "Are you awake? I heard a noise." Laura sighed and replied, "I'm fine, just checking some things." She saved the photos to a USB drive and hid it under the table in a loose slot in the furniture. She didn't trust anyone, not even her own laptop. Something inside her told her that if Sebastian was involved, as she suspected, he wouldn't let a simple cleaning lady expose him so easily. The next day, before heading to the courthouse, Laura made coffee, while her mother watched her from the doorway, arms crossed, and with a worried expression. "I'm not going to pretend I'm calm," Martha said. "You don't know what you're getting into." "Mom, if I stay quiet, Alexander will spend years in prison for something he didn't do." "And you think justice works like it does on TV shows?" she retorted. "These people have power money connections, and you're just a girl who cleans houses." Laura swallowed, but didn't back down. "And precisely because I'm just a girl who cleans houses, no one expected me to speak up. That could be an advantage." Martha shook her head. "I don't want you to end up crying later. That Sebastian guy. You can tell he's dangerous." Laura remembered Sebastian's gaze from the back of the courtroom. That cold, almost calculating expression, as if he could see right through her. She felt a shiver. "I know," Laura admitted, "but he doesn't have to know what I have." Martha came closer and took her hands. "Be careful, please." Laura nodded. She couldn't promise anything. As she left the building, she noticed something strange. A black car was parked across the street. It was the same one she had seen the day before, but this time it wasn't trying to hide. In the driver's seat was a silhouette she couldn't quite make out. When she closed her building's door, the car started slowly, almost as if it wanted her to see it. Laura took a deep breath and continued on her way to the courthouse without looking back. She didn't know if it was Sebastian or someone sent by him, but she wasn't going to show fear. When she arrived at the courthouse, the atmosphere was even more chaotic than the day before. The reporters seemed eager for another explosive moment. As soon as they saw her, they swarmed her. "Did you bring new evidence? Is it true the cameras were tampered with? Are you connected to the missing technician? Are they threatening you?" Laura gritted her teeth and pushed through them without a word. Her heart was pounding, but she tried to keep her expression neutral. Once inside the building, Sheila, the other housekeeper, crossed her path, blocking her way. "Look who's here, the hero of the moment," the woman said with a mocking tone. "I told you not to get involved. Now everyone's after you. I hope you're enjoying it." "I'm not looking for attention," Laura replied. "I'm just telling the truth." "The truth," she repeated sarcastically. "The truth is, you're going to sink alone, and if you go down, you'll drag everyone with you." Laura walked around her without answering. She didn't have time for nonsense. The guard led her to a private room where she was to submit the evidence. As she prepared the USB drive and printed documents, she heard voices in the hallway. Familiar voices. "You shouldn't have let her speak," a male voice said. Laura immediately recognized Sebastian's voice. "I couldn't stop her," replied the voice of Robert Vance. And I'm not risking my career for this. Laura discreetly moved closer to the door without opening it. She could hear clearly. It's not your career you should be worried about, Sebastian said coldly. If that woman opens her mouth tomorrow, and the judge believes her, not only will he be finished, but so will you. I already told you I can't control what she does, Robert replied. She made the decision on her own. I had nothing to do with it. But your silence was useful, Sebastian said. And I hope it will be tomorrow as well. There was a tense silence. Laura felt her stomach lurch. Then Robert's voice was quieter. Look, I don't want any trouble with you. I just want out of this. Then make sure she doesn't talk too much, Sebastian said. Because if she proves Alexander wasn't at the warehouse, I'll have to do something much more serious. Laura stepped back, her heart racing. Her hands were trembling. Sebastian wasn't trying to defend himself. He wasn't denying anything. He was prepared to destroy anyone who got in his way. The guard entered the room and found her pale. Are you okay? He asked. Yes, I just need to hand this in. Minutes later, Laura arrived at the room where officials were reviewing the evidence. She gave them the USB drive, the photos, and a brief report of what she had found. All of this will be analyzed, the official said. If it's sufficient, it could change the direction of the case. Laura nodded, though her mouth felt dry. She knew the real battle would begin when the judge saw the contents, but she also knew Sebastian wouldn't just stand by. Leaving the room, she saw Alexander being escorted in by 2 officers. Upon seeing her, his eyes lit up with a mix of relief and concern. Laura, are you okay? He asked, as the officers stopped him a few feet away. I'm fine, she replied. I've already submitted the evidence. Alexander sighed, as if a huge weight had been lifted from his shoulders. You didn't have to do all this. Of course I did, she said. You would never hurt yourself like that, and I know it. I saw you. You were home that night. Alexander looked down, moved. But before he could say anything else, Laura saw Sebastian a few feet away watching them with a sinister smile. That smile said something clear. I'm not done with you. Laura swallowed hard and forced herself to walk towards the courtroom. At this rate, she wasn't just defending Alexander anymore. She was now fighting against someone who would do anything to keep his secrets buried. The hearing would continue in a few hours, but Alexander had no idea what he was about to face. After the officers took him back to the courthouse holding area, they had him sit in a small, windowless, cold and silent room. He thought it was a break before being moved until the door opened unannounced. The man who entered left him frozen. Sebastian, Alexander muttered. His brow furrowed. Sebastian Croft closed the door behind him, leaning calmly against the frame, as if he had all the time in the world. His gray eyes seemed to enjoy every second of tension. Hello, Alexander, he said softly. Quite a mess you're in. What are you doing here? Alexander asked, trying to remain firm. Sebastian took a few steps forward, hands in his pockets. Just came to see how you were doing. After all, we worked together for many years. I'm concerned about your well-being. Alexander clenched his jaw. Cut the act. You know I didn't do any of what they're saying. Sebastian laughed a dry chuckle. Of course I know, but that doesn't mean you can't take the blame. A chill ran down Alexander's spine. The way Sebastian said it, as if it were the most normal thing in the world. Was it you? Alexander asked, unable to hold back. Did you set all this up? Sebastian raised an eyebrow. Such a direct question. I missed that about you. Alexander took a step forward. Answer me. Sebastian watched him coldly before speaking. Let's just say your misfortune benefits me and other people too. Alexander tensed. Bauer, he's in on this with you. Sebastian's silence was more revealing than any answer. They beat up Bauer to frame me, Alexander insisted. That's what they did. Bauer is a practical man, Sebastian replied, raising his hands. If faking an assault could get him contracts that you took from him, well, he made his decisions. And I just helped the plan work better. Alexander felt an indescribable vertigo. You're sick. No, Alexander, Sebastian corrected. I'm ambitious. There's a huge difference. Alexander moved even closer, ignoring the officers watching from outside through reinforced glass. And what about Laura? He asked furiously. She has nothing to do with this. Leave her alone. Sebastian smiled cruelly. Ah, Laura, the unexpected hero. What a shame she stuck her nose where it doesn't belong. She could have kept cleaning floors without any trouble, but no. Now she wants to play detective. Alexander felt his blood boil. If you hurt her? What are you going to hit me? Report me? Sebastian interrupted, laughing. Please, Alexander, you can't even leave this room without permission. Alexander looked at him helplessly. Sebastian leaned in slightly. A piece of advice, my friend. If you want that girl to stay alive, make her stop talking. Alexander glared at him. I'm not doing that. Then what happens will be your fault, Sebastian said with a shrug. Think about it. He knocked softly on the door, and the officers entered. Sebastian left without looking back, satisfied as if he had won an invisible battle. Alexander slumped into the chair, his hands trembling. He had never feared for his own life, but now he feared for Laura's. He couldn't let them touch her. He couldn't let this end this way. Meanwhile, Laura was in the courthouse cafeteria seeking a moment of peace before her next testimony. The official who received her evidence had congratulated her on her courage, but still advised her not to move around the hallways alone. Not everyone was happy with what she had submitted. Laura opened a bottle of water and tried to calm herself, but her phone vibrated again. Another unknown message. Last warning. She closed her eyes, breathing with difficulty. She could feel anxiety trying to take over, but she forced herself to stand firm. She wouldn't give in. As she walked towards the exit, she nearly collided with a man carrying a stack of documents. Excuse me, are you all right? He asked. Yes, sorry. I didn't see you. The man looked at her curiously, as if he knew her from somewhere. You're the housekeeper who testified yesterday, right? The one who works at Mr. Sterling's house. Laura nodded cautiously. I'm a financial document analyst for the court, the man explained. I just reviewed the papers you submitted, and there's something you should see. Laura frowned. What did you find? The man looked both ways before speaking. The bank documents you provided show suspicious transfers from a company linked to, he looked at his folder, a certain Croft Holdings. Laura felt her stomach drop. Sebastian Croft. It seems so, the analyst confirmed. And there are payments to an intermediary that coincide with the date of the attack on Bauer. If confirmed, it could prove that someone funded that scene. Laura squeezed the bottle in her hand. Can I see those documents? The analyst hesitated. I can't give you copies, but I can give you a hint, he whispered. Look into the mansion's old files. If what I saw there is true, someone has been moving money behind Mr. Sterling's back for months. That explained a lot. It explained why Sebastian was so intent on shutting Laura up. Perhaps he had used the company to launder money or finance shady activities. Laura nodded. Thank you. That helps a lot. Be careful, the analyst warned. These men are not the type to accept defeat. She knew that. She had felt it in Sebastian's eyes. That evening, Alexander was permitted a brief phone call. He used the phone in the surveillance room and dialed Laura's number. She answered almost immediately. "Alexander?" she asked, worried. "Listen carefully," he said hurriedly. "I spoke with Sebastian today, and Laura, you have to be careful." She leaned against the wall of the room she was in. "I know they've been threatening me." "Don't you understand?" he interrupted. "Sebastian won't stop. He was involved in the attack. He's working with Bauer. They want to ruin me, and now you too." Laura swallowed. "I'm not backing down, Alexander." "Laura, please," he begged. "I don't want you to get hurt. I don't want anything to happen to you because of me." She felt a strange ache in her chest, a mix of fear and determination. "I'm in this because it's the right thing to do," she replied. "Not because you asked me to." Alexander was silent for a few seconds. "Thank you," he finally said in a vulnerable voice she had never heard from him before. "Tomorrow we'll take everything to the judge," Laura added. "We're not alone anymore." "Sleep well, Laura," he said, "and please be careful with Sebastian." The call ended. Laura stared at the phone, knowing that the next day both of their lives would change for better or for worse. What she didn't know was that someone was listening to that conversation from a safe distance with a hidden earpiece and a notebook in hand. And that person had just decided that Laura was a problem that needed to disappear. Let's do another joke for those who only check the comments section. Write the word mango. Those who got this far will understand the joke. Let's continue with the story. At dawn, New York was covered in a light fog that made the city look colder than usual. Laura left her building with a folder clutched to her chest. Inside were printed copies of the financial documents, notes on staff schedules, photos of the tampered fuse box, and the turned-off time clock. It was everything she could gather before the hearing. It seemed like little to face a whole network of lies, but for her it was enough to try. As she walked to the bus stop, she felt a strange presence. It was the same black car from the previous day, moving slowly down the parallel street. This time it wasn't hiding. It was going so slowly, it almost seemed to be following her on purpose. Laura quickened her pace, pretending not to have seen it, but the engine purred like a persistent reminder that she was not alone. When she arrived at the courthouse, reporters were already waiting. The light rain didn't deter them. As soon as they saw her, they approached with microphones and cameras like a swarm of bees drawn to light. "Laura, did you bring more evidence? Is it true the technician who checked the cameras has disappeared? Have you received threats? Do you know that Croft Holdings financed illegal investments?" Laura dodged the questions as best she could. Her heart was beating fast, but she kept her eyes forward. She didn't want to make any statements before speaking with the judge. The guards helped her get inside and closed the doors behind her. Once inside, the woman in charge of security checks led her to a nearby office. There, the financial analyst she had met the day before was waiting with an even more worried expression. "Miss Evans, what we found last night complicates things significantly," he said without preamble. "Why?" Laura asked. "The documents from Sebastian Croft's company have connections to overseas accounts," he explained. "And some payments coincide with the date of the attack and others with previous weeks. It's possible they've been financing illegal operations for months." Laura frowned. "And that helped to frame Alexander." "Yes," he replied. "If Alexander went down, Sebastian and Bauer would gain control of the contracts they were competing for. It's a perfect move if no one looks too closely." Laura pressed her lips together. There was no doubt anymore. Alexander was just collateral damage in a much bigger plan. "There's more," the analyst added. "A security camera from a hotel in Boston recorded Bauer entering on the night of the supposed attack. He said he was unconscious in a warehouse in New York. That doesn't add up." Laura's eyes widened in surprise. "And can I use that in the hearing?" "I'll give it to the judge myself. but it's better if you mention it. Your role is stronger than you think." Laura felt a slight dizziness. She never thought a simple testimony would turn her into a key player in bringing down an entire case, but there she was with no escape. When the analyst left, Laura was alone in the office. Her hands were trembling slightly, but she took a deep breath. She needed to control this fear. She couldn't afford to fail now. As she left, she saw the other housekeeper from the mansion leaning against a column, as if waiting for her. Her crossed arms and severe gaze spelled trouble. "Have you realized what you've done?" she asked sharply. "Do you know how many calls we received yesterday? Do you know how much negative attention this has brought to the mansion?" Laura stopped. "I'm just telling the truth." "The truth doesn't pay the bills," the woman retorted, taking a step towards her. "And if Alexander falls, we all lose our jobs. Think about it. Maybe for you it's a game, but for us it's survival." "It's not a game," Laura replied. "Alexander is innocent." "Well, you better have enough to prove it," the woman warned. "Because if you lose, he goes down, and so do we." Laura didn't respond. Not because she agreed, but because she didn't have time for pointless arguments. She walked to the main courtroom, her heart pounding. Outside the room, she saw Alexander being led by the officers. He looked up, and upon seeing her, he tried to smile, though he was clearly dejected. "Everything okay?" he asked in a low voice when they were at a safe distance. "I have new evidence," she said, "and an indirect witness who can confirm Bauer wasn't in New York on the night of the attack." Alexander's eyes lit up. "Laura, this could save me." "I'll do what I can," she replied. Before she could continue, Sebastian appeared behind the officers like a ghost who always showed up at the exact moment to make things uncomfortable. His gray gaze locked onto Laura with an intensity that made her shudder. "I see you're still here," he said with a faint smile. "How brave." Laura ignored him completely. She wasn't going to give him the satisfaction of seeing her tremble. The judge called for silence and summoned everyone into the room. As Laura took her seat, she noticed her phone vibrate in her bag. She didn't want to look, but something inside told her she had to. She took out the phone and saw a new message. Just a photo. It was her mother leaving the house. And the picture was taken from a distance from the same car that had been following her. Laura felt the floor disappear beneath her feet. Fear hit her like an icy wave. She looked around for suspicious faces, but everyone seemed engrossed in the trial. She put the phone away with trembling hands. She knew what it meant. Sebastian was no longer just threatening her. He was now targeting her family. Judge Miller opened the folder with the new evidence. The atmosphere was tense, almost electric. "We will continue with the information presented by Miss Evans," he said. "According to the documents, the cameras at Mr. Sterling's mansion were repeatedly tampered with during the week of the incident. There is also evidence of malfunctions in the time clock system and possible financial irregularities involving third parties." The prosecutor stood up, visibly uncomfortable. "Your Honor, this is not confirmed. It could be coincidences or technical errors." "No, Mr. Prosecutor," the judge interrupted firmly. "They are not. This evidence points to deliberate coordination. And now we have reports that contradict Mr. Bauer's alibi." The murmurs grew louder. It felt as if the air was vibrating. The judge continued. "There is a camera in Boston that shows him entering a hotel on the same night he claimed to be unconscious in a warehouse here in New York." Ark Bauer looked down, tensing his jaw. "I need this court to understand," the judge went on, "that we are dealing with a case with too many contradictions, and I cannot ignore the attempts to manipulate the system." The judge turned to Laura. "Miss Evans, are you ready to expand on your statement?" She took a deep breath, ignoring the tremor in her chest. the threat on her phone, and the constant shadow of Sebastian. "Yes, Your Honor, I'm ready." What she would say next would determine everyone's fate. The courtroom seemed to hold its breath as Laura approached the stand again. Each step felt heavier than the last, but she couldn't afford to show weakness. Alexander watched her with a mix of gratitude and fear, as if he worried that every word she uttered could either save him or destroy him if something went wrong. Judge Miller asked her to stand before the microphone. Laura glanced at her notes, took a deep breath, and looked up at the judge. "Miss Evans," he began, "please explain in detail what happened with the security cameras at the mansion and how this might alter the case's timeline." Laura pressed her lips together before answering. The cameras stopped working days before the incident, but it wasn't a technical failure. Someone turned them off from the internal panel, and it wasn't any employee. The prosecutor stepped forward, visibly irritated. "Do you have proof of that, or are you just speculating?" Laura held his gaze. "I have photos of the forced panel, and I have records showing an unregistered technician entered the house that week. None of the staff knew him." "And how do you know that this technician had anything to do with the alleged attack?" the prosecutor asked. "Because on the same day, the time clock at the back door was also altered, and the cameras in that area lost signal. All of this happened right before Mr. Sterling was accused of being somewhere he wasn't." The judge reviewed one of the documents. "According to this, the clock registered a reset activity on the day of the incident at a time that coincides with a suspicious bank transfer related to Croft Holdings." A loud murmur filled the room. Sebastian, sitting on a side bench, barely changed his expression. He simply crossed his arms and smiled almost invisibly. The prosecutor insisted. "That doesn't prove Mr. Sterling didn't leave the mansion." Laura clenched her fists to contain her frustration. "He didn't leave," she replied firmly. "I was there. I cleaned the house every night. That day was no different. When he arrived, he was exhausted. He went up to his office and stayed there for hours. Then he came down to the kitchen. I heard him clearly, and then he went back to his room." "He could have left through the main door," the prosecutor insisted. "The time clock wouldn't have registered his departure because it was tampered with," Laura explained. "And if the cameras were off, everything would be unrecorded. That's what they wanted, for there to be no way to prove where he was." The judge took the floor. "It seems someone worked to erase all traces of Mr. Sterling during that night." Laura nodded. "I believe so. And I also believe they did it to frame him." Alexander leaned slightly forward in his chair, tense, but with a new glint in his eyes. For the first time since it all began, he seemed to have hope. The prosecutor muttered something inaudible, but the judge ignored him. "Miss Evans," the judge continued, "what can you tell us about the evidence found in Boston regarding Mr. Bauer?" Laura took a breath before answering. "There's a security video from the Legio Sitz Hotel taken on the same night of the supposed attack where Mr. Bauer is clearly seen entering the building on his own, without help, with no visible injuries, and he was definitely not unconscious as he claimed." Everyone in the room turned towards Bauer. He sank into his seat, turning his head to one side to avoid the stares. The judge raised an eyebrow. "That completely contradicts his official statement." Bauer did not respond. His silence was louder than any words. Sebastian, from his seat, shifted his posture for the first time. He leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees like a predator, evaluating a new move. The judge continued. "It appears there is coordination between the fake attack and the manipulation of the security systems at Mr. Sterling's mansion." A shiver ran down Laura's spine. It was the first time she had seen the judge so convinced that something serious was happening behind the case. But just when she thought everything was going her way, the prosecutor slammed his hand on the table, losing his composure. "Your Honor," he exclaimed, "we can't base this solely on an employee's theories. This could be manipulated. She could be lying. Alexander gritted his teeth. Laura wouldn't lie, he said, standing up, despite the officers trying to restrain him. The judge slammed his gavel. Order Mr. Sterling sit down. Alexander took a deep breath and obeyed. Laura felt the pressure in her chest, but didn't back down. I'm not lying, she said in a firm voice. They want me to stop, but I'm not going to stop. The prosecutor seized the opportunity. Who wants you to stop? Do you have any enemies, Miss Evans? Laura hesitated for a second. If she told the truth, it could make everything worse. But if she stayed silent, Sebastian would win. I've received threats, she finally said. Messages, even photos of my mother. Someone is following me. The courtroom erupted. The judge leaned forward, tense. Photos. What kind of threats are we talking about? Laura swallowed. A black car has been following me. Yesterday they sent me a photo of my mother leaving our house. And a message that said, last warning. The judge stood up. Mr. Prosecutor, this is extremely serious. Has your office received any indication of witness intimidation? The prosecutor looked uncomfortable. No, we were not aware of that. Well, you are now, the judge replied coldly. Laura felt a knot in her stomach. She was revealing too much, but it was necessary. If she kept quiet, fear would win. Sebastian watched her without blinking with a disturbing calmness. His gaze seemed to say what you want. You're not going to stop me. The judge continued. We must seriously consider the possibility that Mr. Sterling has been framed and that there are third parties interested in maintaining this story. The prosecutor opened his mouth to reply, but the judge raised his hand, cutting him off. I am ordering a full review of the mansion's security systems verification of the bank records and an evaluation of the Boston video. Until then, the formal charges are suspended. Alexander let out a breath he didn't know he was holding. His eyes welled up slightly. Laura noticed, even though he tried to hide it. Sebastian, on the other hand, stiffened. He didn't expect that. He didn't accept it. The judge slammed his gavel. The court is in recess. We will continue tomorrow with the final conclusion. Laura stepped down from the stand on trembling legs, but with a firm heart. She knew she had taken a big step, but she also knew Sebastian wouldn't stay quiet after this. As she walked toward the exit, Alexander managed to get a little closer, though the officers kept him in check. Laura, he whispered. Thank you. I don't know how I can ever repay you. She shook her head gently. You don't have to repay me anything. You were good to me and my mom, and you're innocent. Alexander moved a bit closer, lowering his voice. Please don't be alone today. Laura was about to answer, but an icy sensation ran through her when she saw a man at the end of the hallway, watching her every move. It was the same man who was in the black car. She didn't know him, but he knew her. The man gave a slight nod, like a macabre greeting, and disappeared into the crowd. Alexander noticed her expression. What happened? Laura didn't answer because what she saw couldn't be spoken without fear taking over. And the worst was yet to come. Laura arrived at the courthouse the next day with the feeling that something invisible was following her closely. Every time she turned, she found unfamiliar faces, some curious, others cold, and one in particular that made her stomach drop. It was the same man from the black car. He was a few feet away, pretending to look at his phone, but she knew it wasn't a coincidence. She tried not to show it as she walked toward the entrance. As soon as she crossed the threshold, a guard approached to escort her to the main courtroom. She didn't know if it was protocol or if the judge had requested extra security after the threats, but she was grateful for the support. Inside, the atmosphere was tense. The room was packed, just like the previous days, but today there was something different. Hope, fear, impatience, all mixed together. Alexander was sitting before the stand, handcuffed, but with his head held high. When he saw Laura enter, a fleeting calm crossed his face, as if her presence alone reminded him that he hadn't lost the battle yet. Judge Miller slammed his gavel to begin. We will continue with the review hearing and take into account the new material submitted by Miss Evans. This court has analyzed the additional evidence, the tampering of the cameras, the alteration of the time clock, the suspicious bank transfers, and the video of Mr. Bauer in Boston. The prosecutor tried to protest. Your Honor, if I may, the defense has not presented a full technical analysis of Mr. Prosecutor, the judge interrupted firmly. The evidence speaks for itself. What we will evaluate today is whether or not there is a solid case against Mr. Sterling. The prosecutor gritted his teeth and sat down. Laura felt a tingling in her hands. Everything was coming to a head. The judge continued. According to the reports, the alleged assault on Mr. Bauer presents clear inconsistencies. There is proof that he was in Boston on the same night. There is no conclusive evidence placing him in a warehouse in New York. And the lack of reliable records at Mr. Sterling's mansion raises serious suspicions about the truthfulness of the testimony presented against him. The public murmured in disbelief. Bauer looked down and avoided eye contact. Laura breathed with difficulty. It was the first time she had heard it stated aloud in an official space that the fabricated story was falling apart. The judge paused for a long moment before addressing the most sensitive part. Furthermore, he went on, the origin of several deposits made from accounts associated with Croft Holdings to third parties involved in this investigation has been traced. This indicates possible acts of corruption and evidence tampering. Sebastian, sitting a bit further back, didn't move a muscle. His face became an impenetrable mask, but in his eyes was a contained fury that Laura felt directly on the back of her neck. The judge picked up a new folder. Based on this evidence, this court finds that the case against Mr. Alexander Sterling lacks sufficient grounds to maintain the charges. The room erupted in murmurs. Alexander, however, just closed his eyes for a second, as if the weight of endless days was slowly evaporating. Laura felt a lump in her throat. She almost wanted to cry, but she couldn't. Not there. The judge raised his voice. I order the immediate release of Mr. Sterling under temporary acquittal while a formal investigation is opened against Mr. Sebastian Croft and any accomplices involved. The prosecutor was in shock. Bauer stared at the floor with a mix of fear and defeat. And Sebastian didn't blink. He just rested his hands on the arms of his seat, as if ready to stand, but the guard behind him placed a firm hand on his shoulder. The courtroom, without realizing it, held its breath. The judge added, I also request protection measures for Miss Evans and her family. She has been a key piece in clarifying these events. Laura felt a jolt. She didn't expect to be mentioned aloud like that. Suddenly, all eyes were on her. A guard approached to stand by her side. She looked down, overwhelmed but also relieved. Alexander stood up as his cuffs were removed. As he did, he searched for Laura with his eyes. She looked up at that exact moment, and their gazes met. It was as if all the noise around them disappeared. Laura, he whispered, when he got closer, though the guards remained attentive. You did it. She shook her head gently. We did it. I just said what I saw. Alexander smiled for the first time in days. A tired but real smile. Thank you for not leaving me alone. Laura's chest felt tight. She wanted to respond, but was distracted by something in the corner of her eye. The man from the black car was in the corner of the room, watching everything with a serious expression. However, now he didn't seem threatening. He seemed evaluative, as if the outcome had changed his orders. As soon as their eyes met, he turned and left through a side door. Laura swallowed. She didn't know if that meant she was safe, or if this was just the beginning. A couple of hours later, Alexander walked out the main entrance of the courthouse, accompanied by officers and his provisional legal team. The reporters went wild trying to get close. Laura left through an alternate exit with 2 guards, but at the end of the hallway, Alexander managed to catch up with her. "Can I talk to you for a moment?" he asked. The guards exchanged glances and allowed it, maintaining a safe distance. "I have to thank you," Alexander said, looking her directly in the eyes. "I never imagined someone like you, someone who had no obligation to help me, would do so much for me." Laura gave a small smile. "I didn't owe you anything, Alexander, but I know when someone is innocent." Alexander sighed, as if the words were heavy. "What you did changed my life. Literally. If it weren't for you, I'd be on my way to prison right now." She looked down, feeling the real impact of what she had done. "And now I want you to be safe," Alexander added. "I'm going to make sure you have protection. No messages, no strange cars, nothing. No one is going to touch you. I promise." Laura felt a mix of relief and fear. No one had ever promised to protect her like that. "Thank you," she said. "And if you ever need anything, whatever it is, just tell me," he added. "You have to let me help you at least once." Laura smiled. "Okay, even though you don't owe me anything." Alexander laughed for the first time. "Okay, I don't owe you anything," he repeated jokingly. They walked toward the exit together. Laura saw her mother waiting at the building's entrance, her eyes filled with tears. As soon as she saw her, she ran to her. "Laura," Martha exclaimed, hugging her tightly. "I thought something would happen to you." Laura held on to her, feeling relief wash over her. "I'm okay, Mom. It's over." Martha held her by the shoulders. "Thanks to that young man and your courage." Laura nodded. As she watched Alexander walk away, protected by officers, she felt something she didn't expect to feel. Peace. She had been stronger than she thought. She had faced threats, pressure, fear, but she had also saved someone who didn't deserve to fall. That night, Laura and her mother had dinner together at home, trying to leave all the chaos behind. The television showed news about the case, all focused on the downfall of Sebastian Croft's corporate betrayal and the bravery of a simple cleaning lady. Martha turned up the volume a bit. "Look at that, you're famous." Laura shook her head, laughing softly. "I don't want to be famous. I just want it all to be over." Martha took her hand. "It will be, and you're going to be okay." Laura looked out the window at the city lights. She knew her life had changed for better and for worse, but she also knew she had done the right thing, and that was enough. The next day, as she straightened her freshly washed yellow uniform, Laura saw her phone vibrate with a notification. It was a new message. "Thank you for your courage. A.S." She smiled. Finally, everything made sense. And although she didn't know what would come next, she knew she had won something invaluable, the certainty that even someone like her could change an entire destiny. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like and subscribe. Tell us in the comments which moment moved you the most and rate the story from 0 to 10. Don't forget to check the links in the description where you'll find special offers on products for your health and rest. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you in the next video.